Hey fellow tennis nerds, I hope all is well. If you want to support Tennisnerd and get your questions answered, please join Patreon, patreon.com/tennisnerd, where you have a chat function. Any kind of extra bucks I get goes towards creating more content, which is what I like to do, but right now I can't do it as much as I would because it's not really financially sustainable, so all your support helps. Thanks for that. And let's now dive into your questions. They come in every which channel Tennisnerd exists: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. If you want your question prioritized, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and ask it there. You're gonna have a small red icon. I'm looking extra for that icon, and I know you're a subscriber. I appreciate you a little bit extra, and costs you nothing and gives me an extra subscriber, which is always good, helps the channel grow. So please subscribe, that's the message. All right, so let's dive into your questions. Let's start with from Need for Cars. This is not a subscriber, but I thought the question was interesting. In the last Q&A, he said, you forgot the Radical Pro. He or she, I don't know the gender. What happened to that frame for you? The Radical Pro, it's still in the wardrobe over there. This is kind of my tennis recording extra room. And that wardrobe is full of rackets. The Radical Pro is a great frame, no doubt about that. I still kind of prefer the Prestige, a little bit lower swing weight. The Radical Pro I have is 330. It's a little bit on the high scale for me, so I prefer having a little bit more access to whip with the Prestige MP. Those usually come in at like 320 swing weight strong for me, so I can then just modify them a little bit and get them up to a slightly lower. For me, it's such a big difference actually between 325 and 330. That's why I'm not using the Radical Pro as my main frame. Currently, it's still the Prestige MP. I still like the whippiness and the thin beam of the Prestige more than my customized Extreme Tour, but the Extreme Tour gives me a little bit more power. So it's somewhere there. Maybe there's something in between, we'll see. One of the highly upvoted comments I got a few days ago was from Andrew. Great videos, would love to see a video on your top value strings. Strings that in your opinion offers the best performance for the price, value alternatives to big name strings. He enjoys Signum Pro Polyplasma Pure. That's a good choice. I do have a few favorites of budget strings that I enjoy. I'm currently working on a review for the top spin strings that I'm actually valuing quite highly as a budget alternative. All their strings are pretty convincing. Some are a little bit too stiff, but the one I've been using in the Extreme Tour is their top rotation, which is on the verge of being too stiff, but it's also excellent in tension maintenance and control. So that's why I actually really like that string. So that could be a possible budget string. I also like their Cyber Flash, for example. So Topspin is a budget brand. I mean, Signum Pro, very nice strings for the good bang for the buck. Vulkel, they make some nice strings with Cyclone and Cyclone Tour. I think those strings are great. Solinco is one of my favorite brands. They're quite mainstream now, but still decent price, I think. But there are strings like MSV that you can get quite cheaply, and they're still good. I'm getting a shipment of Grapple Snake strings, some new strings to review. There are plenty of strings in the marketplace. I'm a fan also of Miami and String Project strings, so I do really like these smaller string brands, these budget brands, as well as I like Luxolon. For me, I can play with all these strings and I see some value in them, but if you have a budget, obviously there are plenty of good strings. You don't need to go for premium brands to get good playability. So I'll definitely create a budget video, a budget string video if you like that. So I'll put that on the list. Any kind of ideas for content, I'll happily consider them, and I appreciate getting some input as I'm a one person working on this. So any kind of ideas I get, sometimes I get them from friends, and I really treasure that because it helps me generate some good content, hopefully that can be helpful to you. Budget strings video to come. Regarding my box of demo rackets video, Joseph Linton said he was most interested in the Technifiber 300. I'll give you a little bit of an update. I mean, more to come on this. The twist power, I struggled a little bit to control that frame. I didn't really gel with the way it plays. Felt a little bit too light for me, maybe with some customization. But on the other hand, my buddy Shi, who is a better player than me, who I hit with today, he really loved the Prince twist power. He plays with the Extreme Tour 310. He thought this one was almost like a switcheroo for him. He was really happy with that stick. So I need more time, and maybe it works more for a guy with a more whippy topspin swing that he has. I'm more of a flat hitter, as Susan actually pointed out in the comments, that for me the Twist Power X97 makes a lot more sense. I mean, I do tend to always go back to these kind of more tight pattern, a little bit more low powered. I just feel more confident hitting flat and going for the shots. I like to take the ball early. That's when I play my best tennis. And these kind of tweener frames, they don't do it for me. I can't play like that with those frames with any confidence. So the Twist Power X97 is more for me. If you're into tweener frames, the feel from the Twist Power is great. I really like the sensation when you hit the ball, but I've struggled to control it, to be honest. So that's the issue there. But yeah, more time, and I'll get more content. I'll get a few other opinions as well, as I try to do, and then I'll do the review. So keep your eyes peeled on the channel. The Technifiber 300 T-Fight RS, I do enjoy a bit more. It's more my game style, 98 square inches, 16-19. Some good power, reminds me very much of the IGA. A little bit different sensation, so they're not exactly the same. Feels like the RS 300 is a little bit more powerful, a little bit more crisper actually. But that might be a string choice. I'm gonna string them up the same to give you a good comparison before I finish the review. I'm also enjoying the Vulcal 320, but like with most 320 racket, for some reason besides the Prestige MP that I'm very much at home with, I feel like it's a little bit too much weight on it, 320 grams unstrung. So that's what I'm struggling a little bit to get the racket head speed I like. But otherwise, that's also a sweet frame. But in this case, I probably prefer the lighter edition of the VCell 300, which is a surprise to me and maybe to some of you as well. When it comes to my video about the best control rackets that I did just last week, what about the Wilson Ultra Pro 1820, asks Jack. And Eduardo, he also commented, great rackets, my racket of choice. Also missed that in the review. I actually mentioned it in the review. I know the Wilson Ultra Pro, now part of the Pro Labs series. That one is definitely more of a control frame, really low power, needs weight to get more stability. It just feels great, but you need to be able to customize it a bit. And it is a fantastic racket. It needs some customization. It needs some weight added, but it's a brilliant frame. It was on the list and you know, competed with the Prestige MP for a while for me. But in the end, I always go back to the Prestige MP. It could be just that the grip shape works better for me, or something else. I just feel very much at home with how the string bed operates on the Prestige. But the Ultra Pro is as good of a racket, so a very nice racket, and something you should consider if you're into these low-powered control frames. The Ultra Pro is fantastic. Sanjit Mandal asked on the Hyper G Soft review, one of my favorite strings, Hyper G Soft. A little bit lively in some rackets, but in the kind of rackets I prefer, that it works pretty well. How is tension maintenance compared to confidential? It's decent, but I still think the confidential holds tension a bit better than Hyper G Soft. Hyper G Soft is a lively string, so if you put it in an open pattern racket, tweener style racket, it's gonna be quite springy after a little while if you hit hard. So it's not the best tension maintenance for string breakers, but it's a nice soft poly if you like to play with polys, but you don't want to go for a stiffer one. So let's go into some Instagram questions before we end this session. I mean, I'll get back to some of this. Hey Jonas from Power of the Sun, what an interesting handle. I'm a big fan of the channel. I know you said you'd be answering less questions, but actually I think I have an interesting one for you for a vlog. So maybe we can do a longer one. I'm choosing between the Dipstick 280 and 300. I think he means the Ripstick. I like the color of the 280 better, but the 300 is closer to my usual weight. Is it okay to buy the 300 and add weight, or is it better to go with the racket that was assigned at a higher weight? That's a very good question actually, but sometimes, I mean, some models, they have two different options, like the Tennisnerd Tour, for example, has a 310 and a 290. Which one should you go for? If you're unsure, I would usually go for the lower weight model, but you also have to look at the swing weight, because if the swing weight is very similar, it maybe makes no sense to go for the lower weight. But if the swing weight is a bit lower on the lighter model, then I think better to go for that one if you're open to customization. If you don't like any kind of customization, maybe it's better just go for the heavier one, and you're pretty safe that it's going to be stable enough. Sometimes with these 290 gram rackets, I do struggle with the stability when you try to take the ball early, but that's just my game style. You might have something, you might be playing completely differently. So generally it's better to go lighter. and then customize if you're open to customizing. And if you really want to get into customizing on a professional level, you check out my buddy Nicky's from Unstrung Custom, his course on customization, and there's a link in the description below, so check that out. It's a very good course. I've been doing half of it now, and I need to go through it more. Maybe make a review in the future. And if you really want to get deep into this stuff, like even from foaming handles, and it's an excellent course to check out. From Fran Mesher: hi Tennisnerd, I'm a YouTube follower and I want to ask you about the new Prestige Tour, previously Pro. Yep, the confusion around the Prestiges continues. The characteristics of that racket are very similar to the Djokovic racket, same beam, 95 square inches. Yeah, that's where the similarities end, I think. You could recreate something similar just for fun, or they have nothing to do with it since you tried both rackets. Thanks very much for Argentina. And a good week. Yeah, thanks for that. I mean, a lot of players reach out to me and they want to copy Novak Djokovic's frame, and I played with Novak's frames going back to the PT113B, then to the PT346.1. These are quite similar, but the PT346.1 was my favorite because it was a little bit lighter. Obviously, he had extended it just a little bit and then removed some weight, and I think it was a bit easier to use. The Djokovic frame is not an easy racket to play with. That's also the case with the Prestige Tour, the new Prestige Tour that was the Prestige Pro. It's a tough racket. It's demanding, 95 square inch head size, heavy, but even that one is not as heavy as the Novak frame. And I said that in a recent Instagram post that, you know, I couldn't play well with that at all. Okay, I improved a lot as a player, but I still now, compared to when I played with that frame, but still it was very difficult. Partly was the grip size. He uses 3 with 2 over grips and a leather grip, but also because the frame, it has a small sweet spot and it's not, and a high swing weight, like 356 or something like that. So don't copy the pros. I've said this many times, might be worth repeating. Don't copy the pros, find your own racket. If you love to tweak and get your frame similar to a Novak frame, you should get like an old Radical, like a Flex Point MP, and then start adding a bunch of weight. For example, that's something that's a little bit more similar. The new Prestige Tour is not quite similar to the Novak frame that I played. And it doesn't have to be. I mean, I don't think we should play with Novak's frame. He should play with his racket and we should find our own racket. That's my opinion about that. Hey, how are you? I don't know if you remember, but I'm the guy who's having shoulder pain, says Enzo Resadori. I commented on one of your YouTube videos. I use RPM Blast and you told me to go for a softer poly. Which one would you recommend me to try? So softer polys, Hyper G Soft is a poly I like. Volcal Cyclone Tour, it's another good softer poly. If you're not worried about tension maintenance, you can check out Wilson Revolve Spin. That's a pretty good one. But that, yeah, drops tension quite quickly. But that's a good one as well. And yeah, there are a bunch of softer polys, and you can check in the Tennis Warehouse University. They have this string comparison tool, so you can check how stiff the polys are, and that's a really useful tool, I find. So beware of too stiff of a poly. I mean, I tried 4G in the Aero VS and that played a lot stiffer than the Solinco Confidential that I used before. So then I obviously need to restring, because I don't want a stiff string bed in a stiff racket. That's not gonna work for me. So give softer polys a go. I like them, but they do tend to lose tension a little bit faster. They can be a bit springy, but it all depends on your game style. Maybe it's not a problem. In a tighter pattern, they work well for me, but in a more open pattern, and they don't last long enough. That's really my take on it. And another question from Danielle Wright. How do you compare this to the VCore Pro 100? This is the Ezone Tour from my first impressions video. I developed tennis elbow using the VCore 98. I'm thinking of switching to the Ezone Tour or the VCore Pro 100. So Danielle, you should definitely go for the VCore Pro 100. The Ezone Tour is one of the stiffer frames I've played, and it plays very, very comfortable in the beginning, no issues whatsoever. Just felt like a brilliant frame. It was, you know, a switch for me. I really wanted to use it. I got 3 of them, and then the pain started in my forearm, and I don't usually have that bad of a pain in the forearm after a few sessions, and it just came in. And then I heard from other people, good players like Karu from Tennis HQ, which is a very good channel, that you should that he also felt, you know, arm pain from that frame. So I think I would definitely not recommend that one. It's very hard for me to recommend, although some players probably are fine with that. It's a very, very nice racket, but it really, has a lot of weight in the throat or something that makes it tough on the forearm when you swing through. So I'd stay away from that if you've had tennis elbow from the VCore 98, and I'll definitely try the VCore Pro 100 if Yonex is your thing. So that's probably the softest one in their lineup, unless you go for the new VCore Pro 97. That's really soft and nice on the arm, but it's a little bit less of a sweet spot. So those are my 50 cents. From Hello Bye Bye, do you think not so advanced player, leisure play would be okay with this racket? He's meaning the VCore Pro rackets. Maybe the VCore Pro 100 could be fine, but the other rackets are very demanding to use, so I would probably stay away from those. But the 100 is a little bit more forgiving, not super forgiving, but still, like, you can get decent power, but it's pretty comfortable. It's kind of in between there, similar to a Blade 100 or these kind of typical 100 range rackets with a bit more comfort, like the Gravity MP. Hello from Shrevno, does adding weight to the handle of the racket reduce its power and increase its control? And that's a question I've gotten before, but I'm not sure if I've answered it before or talked about it. So when you add weight to the handle of the racket, you're changing the balance point and you're adding weight overall, but weight to the handle doesn't really increase the power. But I don't think it increases the control either, because the swing weight will remain the same. So if you add weight to the handle, you're not going to change the swing weight, so the power level will be the same, but maybe it will feel a bit more maneuverable to have a more headlight balance. It would be maybe a little bit easier to swing with the weight more balanced towards the handle than it was in the old frame, but it's not going to make it more controlled, and it's not going to add a lot of power to add any weight in the handle. It might add a little bit of stability just to have a slightly heavier frame, but it doesn't really affect the power level. Overall, when you look at rackets, if the racket is very head light, will need a little bit more weight overall, because the weight in the head is what makes all the difference, right? The weight in the handle is a little bit more of a kind of balancing thing for it to swing through the air well. How much weight is centered in the head is where the whole magic is, because if you have a really light racket, you're going to need more weight in the head. That's the only way to actually be a solid counter force to the ball. Like, if the ball impacts the racket, you need some weight in the actual racket head to make sure that the racket doesn't move around. So if you put all the weight in the handle and there's not really any weight in the head, the racket will still flutter, even if it's overall a more static weight. So adding weight to the handle does not improve the control of the racket, but it might improve the maneuverability a little bit, because it will feel more head light. Hope that helps. I'm rather visual. Hi Jonas, thanks so much for the reviews you do, especially in YouTube. Very helpful for beginners, low intermediate players. Thanks. Just have a question, if a Wilson Blade 100L version 8 still suits a beginner low intermediate too? Yes, it does. The Wilson Blade 100L and the Wilson Blade 104, I thought they were excellent choices for kind of beginner players or lower level intermediates. I really enjoyed the Blade 104. Surprisingly, I thought it would be a no-no for me with all that power and that extra head size. Obviously not the best for my one-handed backhand, but when it comes to hitting a decent forehand, I actually enjoy that frame a lot, and the feeling of these new Blade version 8 rackets is very good. So can definitely recommend checking out the Blade 100 version 8L. The Blade 100L version 8. Yeah, many numbers and names to keep in my head. I might do more Q&As. If you want daily videos, I can do some Q&A every day. I can try different things. Let me know in the comments below if that's gonna bother you and force you to unsubscribe. I don't want to do that either, and I don't want to create boring videos just to create videos. I want them to have value and add something to your tennis knowledge if possible. So let me know that and give me some feedback, and more videos to come, of course. Really hope you enjoyed the video and found something useful. PS, if you want to buy any of these rackets mentioned or anything else and support Tennisnerd, check out my affiliates in the description below. That's all. Have a nice day, and don't forget to play some tennis.